No, that's okay. The committee will come to order. I had a chance to visit briefly with our witnesses. They're so excited to be here, and we're excited to have you. A couple of them are a little nervous, so I told them we'd go easy on them. So it'll be no big deal. So I want to thank you again to our guests and witnesses for joining us today for this important hearing to review what we can do to help more parents go to work and help families escape poverty. We clearly have lots of work to do as we enter the 6th year of the so-called Obama recovery. Not only has this been the worst recovery for jobs and growth ever, but record numbers of Americans are not working or working only temporary jobs. More people dropped out of the workforce during this recovery than during the recession that preceded it. And the median household income is down over $2,000 since this recovery started, all of which may be why nearly half of Americans think that the U.S. is still in a recession. Over 5.5 years after Democrats' trillion-dollar stimulus plan, Americans are still asking, where are the jobs? Make no mistake, work is not only what parents need and what they're looking for, it is the only real path out of poverty. We know this implicitly, and the data confirms it. Less than 3% of full-time workers are in poverty, while the poverty rate for people who don't work is 10 times higher. Work also addresses inequality, the inequality of households in the bottom 20% of the earnings ladder. Less than 1 in 5 had a household member working full-time, and more than 60% had no one in the household who was working at all. In contrast, households in the top 20% of earners had an average 2 workers in the household, with almost all of them working full-time. And looking back, we see the 1996 welfare reforms confirm the centrality of work to reducing poverty. Since the work-based 1996 welfare reforms were enacted, the employment rate of welfare recipients more than doubled, and child poverty rates fell dramatically and are still below the level in the early 1990s. Welfare caseloads have declined by 60%, and still in many places, loopholes have allowed states to keep welfare recipients on the rolls too long without working, reducing their income and increasing their dependence on taxpayers. States now spend only a small share of their TANF funding, 6% in 2013, on activities designed to get welfare recipients back to work. The most recent data from the states for 2011 shows almost 60% of adults on TANF who were required to work had no reported hours in any work or work-related activity. So the question is this: how can we get more low-income adults into jobs so they can better support their families and move up the economic ladder? And as we will learn in the testimony today, one approach to achieving this goal is through supporting subsidized jobs. For years, some states have placed welfare recipients in subsidized jobs, providing payments to public and private employers to hire welfare recipients so they earn a paycheck instead of just collecting a welfare check. The goal of this approach is for the job to continue even after the subsidy ends, but it doesn't always work that way, and raising concerns about effectiveness and cost of such efforts compared to other approaches is legitimate. We hope to review those sorts of issues today to determine how these types of programs can help low-income families escape poverty. The bigger picture is important, too. If we want to promote subsidized jobs or any other way of helping welfare recipients go to work, we simply will not make any progress while the administration continues to insist it can waive precisely these sorts of policies. The irony is, when the administration announced its TANF waiver policy 2 years ago, we were working together across party lines to close loopholes that weakened welfare back to work rules. Those loopholes remain wide open today. We can and should revisit ways to close those loopholes, along with discussing ways to implement ideas like promoting subsidized jobs in the months ahead. But if the administration continues to insist it can simply waive any of the rules Congress creates, it is very unlikely that that will happen. I look forward to today's testimony and our continuing work together on ways to help low-income parents find the work they so desperately need and want. And Mr. Doggett, you're now recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I believe that our objective should be to encourage innovation without wasting taxpayer money on programs that don't work, that are not cost-effective. There's not enough TANF block grant money available now to adequately fund existing programs designed to help poor people secure stable employment, and that's despite the fact that each year TANF continues to serve a smaller and smaller share of poor families. Since no additional resources are being proposed to help lift people out of poverty, we're really in a zero-sum game situation here. Every dollar that we shift to subsidize employment means a dollar less for some other initiative. That doesn't mean it's not a good idea to shift money into subsidized employment. It just means that we need to scrutinize what we're moving it into carefully and what we're moving it out of carefully. Our decisions should be guided by what the evidence shows, not what ideology dictates. Before we divert more TANF funds to any particular initiative, let's ensure that we have that kind of objective evidence to justify how the money's being allocated. Probably the greatest potential for subsidized employment is for those individuals who face the greatest barriers to being hired: ex-offenders, those with serious physical or mental health issues, long-term unemployed, and older workers who often face discrimination. I know that one of our witnesses that I look forward to hearing from, Ms. Collins, will tell us about the transformative effect that such a program had on her life, and I'm sure that's true of many others. Overall, however, the evidence is modest and it's mixed as to whether subsidized employment programs are actually effective, cost-effective, in helping a substantial number of poor people secure a stable job at a wage that will help them escape poverty. Certainly the offer of free or almost free taxpayer-financed labor would have appeal to most any business. The question is whether when the taxpayer subsidy ends, does the job end also, or does it truly open the way to long-term unemployment, to long-term employment, not unemployment? Does subsidized employment offer an opportunity, or is it just another windfall? I think the verdict is largely still out, but probably to ensure more opportunity through subsidized employment, where it does appear to work, we need some strong safeguards in place to protect the taxpayer investment that is at stake. Today's hearing is another way to scrutinize the potential of expanding subsidized employment programs to more people, and it deserves the same care and attention that this subcommittee has applied in previous hearings to other types of public expenditures. I know that Mr. Bloom's testimony indicates that most subsidized employment programs that have been tested have not produced the sustained increases in unsubsidized employment we'd like to see. And Mr. Dorr writes that in his experience running a subsidized employment program sometimes proves to be an expensive intervention that was not necessarily more effective than some less costly strategies at trying to get people from welfare to work. Today is an opportunity to learn more about these programs and their effectiveness. It will also help us to determine whether we can make decisions to support programs based on evidence or whether we'll simply rely on ideology as a guide. I agree that the TANF program, set to expire at the end of September, very soon, is long overdue for serious examination. I voted for the 1996 welfare reform law that established TANF because I support reducing poverty by promoting work. It is just a matter of determining what the most effective way to do that is. And indeed, this law, in combination with a very strong economy and improvements in the earned tax credit, did help prepare more individuals into the workforce back in the 90s. Unfortunately, nearly all of the progress that we experienced from the law in increasing employment levels for single mothers or reducing poverty for children ended in about 2000. And ever since then, most of the major trends have been negative. 4 years of success followed by 14 years of shortcoming is not the greatest record. Why have we seen this failure? Well, I think to start with, the amount of resources available for TANF, the size of the block grant has declined in real terms by almost a third since 1996. And some states, including my home state of Texas, have seen a much sharper decline because Congress refused to renew TANF supplemental grants that expired in 2011. As I said earlier, a smaller and smaller program, portion of poor families, poor children receive TANF, and when folks aren't receiving TANF, they're not participating in TANF work activities like working, education, training, so forth. I look forward to the testimony of each of you so that we can learn how to make genuine improvements that really make effective use of our taxpayer money to accomplish the objective of helping people move from welfare to work and stay in that workforce with a living wage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doggett. And without objection, each member will have the opportunity to submit a written statement and have it included in the record at this point. I want to remind our witnesses to limit their oral statements to 5 minutes, and however, without objection, all the written statements and all your written testimony will be made a part of the permanent record. On our panel this afternoon, we'll be hearing from Sandra Collins, Assistant Manager, Goodwill Olympics Rainier Region, Amy Dvorak, Employer Relations Coordinator, New York State Erie County Department of Social Services, Robert Dorr, Morwich Fellow, Poverty Studies, American Enterprise Institute, Dan Bloom, Director, Health and Barriers to Employment Policy area. Now, the first witness we will have testify today is one that I'm personally proud to have here and to have the privilege to introduce. Ms. Collins came all the way to Washington, D.C. from Washington State to be here today to share her story. And it takes a lot of courage to share a story that has been a struggle. I think all of us can relate to stories within our own families that maybe get retold and told, and maybe you're going through a current story in your own family that you can identify with. But those stories build character, build strength, and build a person like Sandra. And we're so happy to have you here to share your success with us. And as Mr. Doggett said, to help us, members of this committee, subcommittee, and the members of the full committee, understand what we can do to help people get back to work and off welfare and have a smile on their face like you have right now. And I know you're a little nervous, but you're going to do just fine. So you're recognized for 5 minutes, Sandra. Welcome. Yes.
Chairman Reichart, Ranking Member Doggett, and members of the committee, it is an honor for me to sit before you today to tell you my success story. I am Sandra Collins, and I am now the Assistant Manager at Goodwill Outlet store in Kent, Washington. I'm about to become a homeowner. I've come a long way. In April of 2007, my life looked very different. I was homeless, living in a shelter with 2 children, had been a meth abuser for 17 years, a victim of domestic violence, and I felt alone. I had burned all my relationships with my family and friends. I had 0 credit, no high school diploma, and a stack of legal offenses that kept me from a driver's license. My self-worth and confidence were at all-time lows. It was time for a change, but I didn't know how to get it started. I went to apply for TANF and enrolled in the WorkFirst Community Jobs Program. I was assigned to my caseworker, Cindy, and she was the first of many trusting relationships for me. I was closed about my problems with her at first, of fear of having my children taken away, losing my financial assistance, or being put in jail. My license had been suspended, and I didn't tell Cindy that I was homeless. It took a few months to start to build trust. Cindy got me placed into a work program at a Goodwill outlet store close to my GED class site. It turned out to be the best job for me and would change my life permanently. Without a car and living 2.5 miles from the bus stop, my commute was 4 hours a day round trip. But I was punctual and I worked hard. I even volunteered to do additional work. Things were real dark. There was a glimmer of hope breaking through. I knew the power of having a job would help me escape poverty. My manager was willing to flex with my commute schedule. Not only did I expand my work skills, but coworkers showed real happiness to see me. I felt special and important. I had meaning in my life and gained self-worth. It made me want to return every day. Cindy enrolled me in a program that provided me with transportation to the bus stop, making my commute so much shorter. Cindy's role as a case manager was critical. Eventually, I did open up about my problems, and Cindy provided resources or solutions for all of them. I didn't feel as helpless or alone anymore. She even helped me get my license back. When the community jobs program ended, I had my GED, and my Tacoma outlet store manager, impressed with my hard work, recommended me for the perfect full-time job at a Goodwill store. I remember my first day very clearly. January 15th, 2008. I started at the Lakewood Goodwill as a production worker. That April, the original Tacoma outlet store had an opening and asked me to return. It felt like a great accomplishment to be wanted back. I remember thinking that I am somebody. In July of 2008, I was promoted to supervisor at the Tacoma outlet store. Work had changed my life. The people were supportive, and as I worked hard and proved myself. While working, other Goodwill services also made a huge difference. I took the Goodwill Financial Literacy course and opened a bank account. The course taught me how to set goals. My short-term goals were to focus on staying clean and sober, getting to work every day, keeping my kids safe and on a good path. My long-term goals were get a car and a house and become a manager. I jotted them down as a pie in the sky. In 2009, I enrolled in a Goodwill Wheels to Work program, and I was able to get financing for my own car. I'm proud to say I'll be buying my own home for my family in August. Since becoming a supervisor, I have had an amazing opportunity to bring on people who have faced similar problems. Out of the 36 employees at my store, 13 are community job program graduates, and a few others are enrolled in the program now. I take great pride in serving as a mentor and helping them. People call me the volunteer queen because I always have community job participants placed at my site. Because of my experiences, community jobs participants open up to me about their lives. I am able to give back to them what was given to me. Support, encouragement, challenges, and resources. Now it is time for me to set some new goals. I just interviewed for a Goodwill store manager position, and I got it. In closing, people like me need a second chance to get our lives back on a better path. Goodwill and the Washington WorkFirst Community Jobs Program gave me and many others that chance. I could not have done it alone. Thank you, and my family thanks you, for the federal funding and support that has helped me get to where I am at today. These programs make a difference, and I am living proof of it, because jobs change lives. Thank you.
Well, Sandra, that was a pretty powerful testimony. The other three still want to continue? Congratulations on your promotion, and congratulations on the purchase of your home, too. Good job. Ms. Dvorak, unfortunately, you get to follow. You're recognized.
Good afternoon, Chairman Reichert, Ranking Member Doggett, and members of the committee. Before I begin, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you on behalf of the Erie County Department of Social Services and the Pivot Program. In September of 2000, the Erie County Department of Social Services initiated a job training program called the Pivot Program. This unique wage subsidy initiative was designed to bridge the gap between the local business community and welfare recipients, and is based on the premise that welfare reform success requires that TANF recipients play an active role and become a part of the business community. The goal of the Pivot Program is to provide incentives to employers to hire clients with multiple barriers and those that may need more time on the job training. Pivot provides quality job opportunities for the employable TANF population while serving as a resource for the hiring needs of local employers. Job developers match employable TANF clients with companies looking to fill existing positions. All candidates are pre-screened for job compatibility, including matching a client's skills, abilities, and education with the job specs. The employers must be an existing company and have permanent, long-term positions. Pivot is always looking to work with companies where there is room for advancement and higher paying wages. The employer benefits include a 6-month subsidy that covers 100% of the client's wages. Employers are involved in the interviewing process and provided an opportunity to select from multiple candidates. The employer receives a 3-month advance when the client is first hired to cover initial training costs. The contract is then reconciled before final payment is made to the employer. The employer is able to reduce hiring and training costs and is able to participate in monthly job fairs, enabling the company to interview and recruit new prospective employees. Many clients' cases close within a month of obtaining employment, and case management is provided to help guarantee these clients do not return to welfare and receive public benefits. The benefits to social services include client placement into employment and reduction of the cash grant and the closing of cases due to employment. Another benefit is the development of community partnerships for placement of unsubsidized clients. By developing good working relationships with employers, job developers are able to make additional placements for other DSS clients not eligible for Pivot. We have learned from employer feedback that prospective employees lack soft skills needed to be successful in jobs. In an effort to address this need and broaden the base of Pivot-eligible candidates, the Pivot program works hand in hand with the Work Experience program. Erie County has developed a model of neighborhood hub sites at various not-for-profit sites located in the north, south, east, and west of the city. These work experience hubs were developed to increase participation in federally accountable work activities by making work sites more accessible to TANF clients. These sites are located in neighborhoods where TANF clients live and combine work experience with vocational and education programs, computer training, high school equivalency, and English as a second language classes. There is a job developer assigned to every hub site. This person goes out weekly and meets with the clients that are ready to be placed into employment. The client will continue to work with the job developer until placement occurs. Several of our supervisors at these hub sites are former clients that were working with our job development unit. They were referred for positions based on their leadership qualities, excellent attendance, and motivation at the work site. One of the biggest problems businesses have is attracting and retaining high-quality employees. Businesses want employees that can come to work every day, be punctual, communicate with their supervisor, and be a good team player. The number one reason people lose their job is time and attendance. The number two reason is problems with their supervisor. With Pivot, the job developer initially acts like a mentor between the client and supervisor. The client is provided extensive case management services when they first begin their employment. Follow-up is provided to assure supportive services are in place, which include transportation and child care. Some of the businesses that have been targeted and successful with Pivot are nursing homes, hospitals, banks, hotels, call centers, manufacturing and industrial companies, small and large businesses, food service, not-for-profits, and community agencies. The Pivot program currently works with over 300 businesses in Western New York and is always evolving based on the time of year and labor trends. Since 2000, over 4,300 clients have been placed in Pivot with an average of 460 per year. The Pivot program is funded through by the Flexible Fund for Family Services, which is a federal allocation. The success of Pivot has proved that when people are given support and the opportunity to work, they can be successful in their life, role models for their children, and can be self-sufficient.
Thank you, Mr. Bork. Good job.
Thanks.
Mr. Dorr.
Thank you, Chairman Reichert, Ranking Member Doggett, and other members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I greatly appreciate being invited to discuss subsidized jobs programs and their role in alleviating poverty. My name is Robert Dorr, and I'm the Mortgage Fellow in Poverty Studies at the American Enterprise Institute. Prior to joining AEI, I spent 18 years working in government social services programs for the state and city of New York. My experience with the management of subsidized or transitional jobs program has given me considerable insight into how these programs are actually serving welfare recipients, insight which I would like to share now. The most important objective and key outcome for assistance programs is lasting employment for the recipient. Not only is full-time employment the surest way to avoid poverty, but earnings are the most important form of income for a family. Only 3% of all full-time workers are defined as being in poverty by our nation's official poverty measure. The strong emphasis that programs such as the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families place on helping applicants and recipients move into employment as rapidly as possible clearly acknowledges the fundamental role employment has in helping people out of poverty. In the years following the passage of Welfare Reform Act of 1996, it became apparent that resulting increases in work opportunities and consequent earnings was the main reason child poverty and overall poverty fell during those years. More workforce participation, especially by single mothers, resulted in higher earnings and a substantial decrease in poverty. While employment and its consequent earnings are key to alleviating poverty, it is also important to remember that we already subsidize jobs. The Earned Income Tax Credit, public health insurance, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, and child care assistance are the largest but not the only government assistance programs that can greatly increase the resources available to low-income working households. It is in this context, with the recognition of existing programs that already work to shore up low wages, and the focus on rapid employment in unsubsidized jobs, that we must evaluate whether subsidized or transitional jobs are an effective tool to help people in need. In New York City, we ran a large and I believe effective subsidized jobs program, but it was only a limited part of our overall effort. In New York, we worked with the Parks Department to form the Parks Opportunity Program, which created job positions lasting 6 to 9 months and consisting of 4 work days and 1 training day each week. The program was designed to serve a discrete subset of welfare recipients. Participants were primarily compliant, hard-to-place clients who had been on welfare assistance for more than 1 year and were not in sanctioned status. Additionally, for a time we offered subsidized jobs to clients in shelters who agreed to leave the shelter. We also offered transitional jobs to compliant, though out of work, non-custodial parents whose children were on welfare assistance. While this program worked well for some recipients, participants did not exit the program with any increase in their probability of finding future employment over those cash assistance recipients in our regular program. The placement rate was similar to the rate for welfare recipients in our program in both our Back to Work and WorkFirst programs. The key lesson we took away from the Parks Department program that was while the availability of subsidized jobs was beneficial for a portion of our caseload, the program itself was more costly and not effective enough to justify more than a limited investment. Upon exiting the program, placement rates were roughly equal to other work programs, but they had incurred a much higher cost. Ultimately, we need to ensure that the actions we take in creating job opportunities end in positive results and provide paths to consistent long-term employment. While subsidized jobs programs may produce those results for some individuals in some sectors, they cannot replace a focus on rapid attachment to unsubsidized employment for regular public assistance recipients. I should also point out that there were also other benefits associated with the Parks program. First of all, the Parks Department got additional assistance in manpower to do jobs they might not have been able to do without the support of a program like ours. In addition, for those members of our public assistance caseload who would not be able to receive the generous work supports that generally go to households with children in them, subsidized programs, these are mostly single individuals and often young men, subsidized programs were an avenue to get them into work that we did not have and we did need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doar. Mr. Bloom, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to testify about the research evidence on subsidized employment. My name is Dan Bloom, and I'm with MDRC, a nonprofit, nonpartisan research organization. I'd like to use my time to make 3 general points about subsidized employment. The first point is about goals. Subsidized employment is a broad term that means different things to different people. Some subsidized employment programs are designed primarily to provide work-based income support. That is, to put money into the pockets of unemployed workers during periods of high unemployment. These are sometimes called countercyclical programs. The best known of this type of program operated during the Great Depression, but many of the state programs that were supported by the TANF Emergency Fund in 2009 and 10 also fit into this category. Other subsidized employment programs are explicitly designed to improve people's long-term success in the labor market. They're much smaller, and they target people facing serious obstacles to steady work, people coming home from prison, long-term TANF recipients, and others. Some models, called transitional jobs programs, place people into what might be called practice jobs with nonprofit organizations so they can learn to work by working. Others offer subsidies to private employers to hire program participants, and some programs do both. When assessing the success of a particular program, it's critical to consider the program's goals. A large, broadly targeted countercyclical program might be judged on its ability to get going quickly and provide meaningful work to large numbers of people who would not otherwise be working. In this respect, I think the TANF Emergency Fund experience was quite positive. States were able to scale up programs in a very short period, and they put about 280,000 people to work, including youth and summer jobs. In contrast, transitional jobs programs that are designed to improve participants' success in the labor market could be assessed at least in part based on the longer-term employment patterns of their participants, as well as other related measures like reduced recidivism for ex-prisoners or reduced reliance on public benefits for welfare recipients. My second point is about evidence. Over the last 30 or 40 years, there have been a number of rigorous evaluations of subsidized employment programs. Many of these studies use a random assignment design, which is the gold standard for studies of this type. And these studies tested the kinds of programs that were explicitly designed to improve people's long-term success in the labor market. And the results are mixed. On the one hand, we've seen that programs can generate very large increases in employment initially because they give subsidized jobs to lots of people who would not otherwise be working. We studied one program for ex-prisoners that also reduced recidivism and saved money for the government. On the other hand, most of these programs did not lead to sustained increases in unsubsidized employment. In other words, it doesn't look like the subsidized work experience helped people get or keep regular jobs. The main exception to this pattern is a few programs that provided temporary wage subsidies to private employers who hired people from certain disadvantaged groups. There's some evidence that these programs have increased employment even beyond the subsidy period. The issue has been that most of these programs have been small and selective in who they served. One key question for any program that subsidizes private employers is whether employers are receiving a windfall for hiring the same kinds of people they would have hired anyway.